We are going to begin this hour in the Middle East, where Iran is laying out a steep set of demands for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has vowed not to reopen that critical shipping lane until America, quote, corrects its behavior. Now, this is despite a side arrangement they've been negotiating with Oman that's been reported to be nearly completed.
The U.S. has yet to respond publicly to that list of conditions. President Trump does insist negotiations are ongoing, but Democrats are arguing he has already lost the war. NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr joins us now with the latest details. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. We've all known for a while now that the Strait of Hormuz is at the heart of this conflict and of trying to resolve it. And Iran's foreign minister looked to be tempering expectations over negotiations with Oman about management of the strait, which runs between the two countries, saying that any progress made in those discussions does not mean the strait has been reopened. Growing uncertainty this morning over the Strait of Hormuz and its central role in ending the war with Iran. Iran's top diplomat said there are no negotiations right now with the U.S. after Tehran listed a series of demands through state media for reopening the strait to shipping traffic, including a permanent end to the war and no further threats to Iran, an end to the U.S. blockade and withdrawal of all American military, and that the U.S. lift sanctions and pay back assets to Iran. Vice President J.D. Vance said the administration is applying pressure.
We're in the middle of the game, and we're applying a whole host of tools, diplomatic, economic, military tools.
President Trump, who has repeatedly insisted the war is nearly over, told Axios in a new phone interview his administration is, quote, low-keying it with Iran and only semi-negotiating, while emphasizing economic pressure on Iran. Democrats slamming the president's approach.
Donald Trump has lost this war. America is weaker. Iran is stronger. The price to reopen the strait increases by the day.
The administration rejects that, with the vice president saying there's been some progress in recent days.
We're trying to maximize the amount of oil and gas that are coming out of the Strait of Hormuz.
All as the broader push for peace in the region hit a serious snag, with Israel rejecting President Trump's peace plan for Gaza that includes Israeli troops withdrawing while Hamas disarms. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, though, told his cabinet Israeli forces are not leaving until after Hamas completely disarms, a red line for Hamas. Netanyahu also reasserted that as long as he is prime minister, there will be no Palestinian state, while Hamas has said that until one is established, it won't lay down its heavy weapons, all of it threatening to reignite tensions with President Trump, who considers the Gaza deal a key achievement. Joe and Savannah.
Alice, let's get back to Iran. What more do we know about the status of Iran's talks with Oman over trying to reopen the strait?
Yeah, we've been hearing for days now that things are moving along and that there's reason to be optimistic that this could lead to the strait reopening. Oman said the negotiations with Iran were proceeding in a positive and constructive atmosphere over how to manage traffic through this shipping route that we know has this outsized role in the price we're paying for gas and for so many other things. Those discussions include potentially considering a toll fee, something President Trump has vocally opposed. And Iran, again, is making clear that an agreement with Oman does not mean that the strait is going to be reopened. But officials in Tehran are saying that reaching some kind of deal over management of the strait with Oman could lay critical groundwork for if and when Iran and the U.S. can finally come to agreement to then lead to that channel reopening.
All right, Alice Barr in Washington. Alice, thank you.
Well, the Trump administration is starting the week with a new cabinet member in its ranks.
Over the weekend, the Senate confirmed Todd Blanche to take on the role of Attorney General permanently. President Trump's former personal attorney was confirmed by a slim vote, 50-49, with 2 Republican senators joining all Democrats in voting against Blanche.
NBC News politics reporter Megan Brand joins us with this and other news out of D.C. this morning. Megan, good morning. So now that Blanche is officially on the job, what's the first things here on his to-do list? What could it tell us sort of about what kind of attorney general he'll be?
Hey guys, good morning. So even though Blanche was just confirmed over the weekend, because he had several months as acting attorney general, we have some details about what he could potentially, what to look for in terms of what kind of attorney general he will be moving forward. So one of the most controversial parts of his time as acting attorney general was when he signed off on that so-called anti-weaponization fund that had nearly tanked his nomination even before it made it out of committee, when Senators John Cornyn of Texas and Tom Tillis of North Carolina had said that they would not support him until that was officially canceled. And so then ultimately Blanche had issued an order that had rescinded the previous order that had established that so-called anti-weaponization fund. So something to watch for is, will the DOJ, will the Trump White House try to revive that fund in any kind of way moving forward now that Blanche is confirmed? Now, another thing to watch for, to give us a sense as to what kind of Attorney General Todd Blanche is going to be, is who the Department of Justice tries to bring cases against. This was also a pretty big part of that nomination process that lawmakers had raised some concerns about, particularly Democrats who had raised concerns about the Department of Justice trying to prosecute President Trump's political enemies. So, for example, one of the people that the Justice Department had brought a case against while Todd Blanche was serving as acting Attorney General was former FBI Director James Comey. He had brought that case. The Department of Justice had argued that Comey had effectively threatened President Trump's life by posting a picture of seashells spelling out 8647. That's something that Comey has denied, and his lawyers have moved to dismiss the case. But looking ahead, one of the big questions is, who will President Trump's Department of Justice try to prosecute next, Joan Savannah?
Megan, before leaving for recess, the Senate did pass a short-term funding bill to prevent a shutdown before the midterm elections, as we like to say, kicking the can down the road. What's in this, and is it likely going to pass the House?
So this passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. It was a vote of 90-6, which is pretty rare nowadays. This is a continuing resolution, so it funds the government at mostly the same levels through December 11th. There are a couple of new provisions in this, though. One is something that Democrats had wanted in there that they're saying would prevent the Trump administration from blocking grants to states for political reasons. So looking ahead now, this has to go to the House. Now, both the House and the Senate are now on August recess. They are back in their states. Many of them are campaigning right now ahead of the midterm elections this fall. And so when they get back in September, then the House is going to have to take this up. So it's likely going to go into at least part of September. Now, the date that we're looking at here is the end of September. That is when funding ultimately runs out, meaning that if lawmakers can't get this over the finish line by then we would ultimately enter a government shutdown in October. So if the House passes it, President Trump then has to pass it. So there are a couple of steps that have to happen before this ultimately becomes law. But if it does, then lawmakers would be able to avert a government shutdown ahead of the midterm elections, which is something that is on their minds, especially for the lawmakers who are in some of these pretty tough re-election campaigns, who are concerned about what it would look like if they are in office during another government shutdown, guys.
Megan, the president's other big priority was passing the SAVE Act. It furthered requirements for voter ID. This is really sort of taking aim at mail-in voting. In the end, the Senate didn't act on it. What happened?
Yeah, so this is a huge priority for President Trump, and it's something that he had actually urged Senate Majority Leader John Thune to keep the Senate in session until the Senate was able to pass the Save America Act, which would reshape how elections run in the U.S. Now, ultimately, as we saw, as the Senate's on recess now, that did not happen. Now, there really just does not seem to be enough support in the Senate for this. It would have to pass that 60-vote filibuster threshold, meaning that some Democrats would have to cross the aisle in order to support it for it to pass, which simply is not going to happen. And so President Trump then has pushed for Senate Republicans to get rid of the filibuster. There also doesn't seem to be enough support there. There are a couple of senators, Republican senators, who say that they do not want to get rid of the the filibuster. People like Senator Tom Tillis, for example, who has painted the argument basically that the filibuster prevents this pendulum-like swing in policy each time there is a new political party in power, guys.
All right, Megan, thank you so much.
Top Democrats are lining up behind Michigan's Democratic Senate nominee Abdul Al-Sayed as the general election campaign kicks into high gear. Now even a former president is throwing his support behind the political outsider. More on that from Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker. Kristen, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke with Michigan Democratic Senate nominee Abdul Al-Sayed about the phone call he received from former President Obama following his primary victory. Let me ask you about some news that we are learning. Local outlets reporting that you spoke to former President Barack Obama on the phone. I know you're not going to give me every detail of the call, but what was the crux of his message to you, Dr. Al-Sayed?
Well, Kristen, you're right. I like to keep private conversations private, but it was a really warm and inspiring conversation. I got to be honest with you, I never saw myself ever able to run for public office. I literally told former President Bill Clinton that at my college graduation, in which I was the senior speaker and he was the main speaker. And I then watched the next year Barack Hussein Obama run for and win the presidency. I watched him serve with a level of class, a level of elegance that we could only pine for now. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I was grateful for his advice. It was very warm, very inviting. And I know that he knows the critical role that Michigan is going to play in holding Trump accountable, in winning back the Senate, and in building forward the future that we need.
Is he going to campaign with you, Dr. Al-Sayed?
Look, I really hope so. And it was a really good conversation about what we need to do to be able to win. And obviously, this is somebody who knows a lot about winning Michigan.
And just to be clear, do you anticipate he'll show up on the campaign trail with you? Is that one of the broad topics you all discussed?
Look, we talked a lot about what it'll take to win. Obviously, his presence here in Michigan would mean so much to the coalition that helped elect him. So I hope that we get to campaign together.
You can see my full interview with Abdul Al-Sayed at MeetThePress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, jury selection is set to begin today for the trial of the man accused of planning the murder of rap icon Tupac Shakur. Prosecutors say that 63-year-old Dwayne Keefe D. Davis orchestrated the infamous drive-by shooting that killed Shakur 30 years ago.
Davis has spent years talking about his involvement in the case, saying he was inside the Cadillac with the gunman when shots were fired from the back seat near the Las Vegas Strip. Davis faces a single count of murder and has been jailed since 2023. He's pleaded not guilty.
NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris joins us now to break down the case. Misty, good morning. So important distinction here. Prosecutors are not saying he fired the shot. They're saying he helped orchestrate the killing. I talk about that because there are previous statements that he took credit for supplying the gun used, but there's a distinction here. How do prosecutors sort of make this argument?
So in a book that he wrote in 2019, he has a play-by-play of what happened that night. They went out, set out to find Tupac with a gun that was provided by him for retaliation for a prior altercation, went out looking for him. So under the law, somebody who's part of the planning of the crime and the commission of the crime can be held equally as responsible as the person that pulls the trigger. So that's why you see a murder charge. But interestingly enough, all that information comes from him. So the defendant is actually the prosecution's star witness.
Very interesting. But the other thing, Misty, is like he's been taking credit for the shooting since 2008. So why did it take all the way until 2023 to see this arrest?
So 2008, he entered into a proffer agreement with the federal investigators. A proffer agreement means you cannot be prosecuted for any information that is provided in that session. It's only until he started making comments about this very publicly and wrote that tell-all book where he really lays it out. And that breaks the proffer agreement because it doesn't cover statements that you make in the public sphere.
So if you're a defense attorney and you see this book right here, how do you defend that? How does that complicate things for his defense?
So what the defense has said is that he's a co-author. There was a ghostwriter, that he actually fabricated the story because he wanted to make money. So we're in another interesting and unique legal situation where the defense is arguing our client was lying. He was lying when he wrote this book. And prosecutors are saying, jury, you should believe what he said on these pages.
How strong of a case do you think the prosecution has here 30 years later?
So you have these statements that are made in the book, and the whole case is going to be about prosecutors showing that these were credible statements that the jury should believe. And what they're going to do is take other parts of the book and say, well, these parts are objectively true, and the defense will say the opposite. There's things that are demonstrably false. But what don't they have? They don't have the murder weapon. They don't have the getaway car. There's no surveillance photo. The other 3 individuals who are allegedly in that car are now deceased. So it's really going to rise and fall on whether or not the jury believes what was written in this book and statements that Davis made in the media.
Should be fascinating to see it all unfold. All right, Misty Maris, good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Well, out west, crews are finally starting to get control over the destructive wildfires burning across multiple states. Officials in Washington state say hundreds of firefighters working around the clock made exceptional progress in containing the fires burning near Spokane over the weekend. Well, meanwhile, across the eastern part of the country, another round of record-setting high temperatures are forcing people to beat the heat however they can.
In Chicago, a line of intense storms brought torrential rain overnight. Meteorologists say over 1.5 inches of rain fell in less than an hour. That caused flooding in some areas.
That is where NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us from with the very latest here. Shaq, good morning. We can see some of that damage behind you. Just tell us about these storms.
Yeah, some people very upset this morning because their trees or their cars are now under trees. And you can see some of the damage. We saw that wind and that rain in the Chicago area. You see that branch crashing down onto this car, just one of several. The branch completely blocking this road here, blocking and messing up the morning commute. Now, we saw in the overnight hours that wind and rain in the Chicago area. But if you look in Illinois, you saw actually reports of tornadoes about 2 hours away from where I'm standing now. We saw some tornado damage there. We'll wait for the National Weather Service to come out and actually inspect that to confirm it was a tornado, but that just gives you an idea of the range of weather that we've been seeing here in the Midwest. And the problem is we have more of it to come. The National Weather Service saying that you can expect another round of storms later this afternoon, especially as we go into the evening hours, which means it's not just the morning commute that's been impacting these folks, but they could be looking for a messy evening as well, guys.
Shaq, very different issue out west where the fires are still burning. We did say crews are making progress. How close are they to fully containing them or at least getting them better under control?
Progress, but there's still a ways to go. You only have one of those fires that's above 60% containment right now. You still are talking about massive evacuations, especially in the Spokane area. I believe it's a level 2 or level 3 evacuation order in Washington state. And then Reno, you're also dealing with evacuations and these wildfires that continue to burn. We also know that they have turned deadly in the Utah area. We saw 2 firefighters being honored. They were fighting the fire via helicopter, and unfortunately they did not survive that fight with the fire. So this is that firefight. So this is something that's continuing, but there's still a ways to go in terms of getting the containment to the levels that are going to be satisfactory to folks there.
And Shaq, how about the heat wave? How much longer is that going to last?
Oh, yes, that heat is going to continue. You have heat on both coasts right now. You know, in New York, we have some great video of the water balloon fight that some folks in Central Park were doing and having to kind of, get that break away from the heat. You can expect the heat to last a couple more days, especially out west where you have those heat warnings in effect at least through Wednesday. Again, heat can be a serious thing for folks. It can be deadly. That's why you have folks and experts reminding you, take those breaks, go inside, avoid the heat as much as you can. Don't stay outside too long because the effects can definitely sneak up on you. Guys.
All right, Shaq, stay cool, stay safe. Thanks so much.
We need a lot of water balloons there. For more on what to expect, let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lastman.
She's tracking the latest conditions as we get our work week started. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey there, we've got another day of hot temperatures on tap for us, and you can see these heat alerts up for a whole lot of folks. Upwards of 49 million people included in those across the southern plains, parts of the southwest. This is going to be something that Oklahoma City, St. Louis, Memphis sees through at least the day today, with a couple of records, a handful of them possible across sections of the southern Rockies and plains today. Here's a big picture look at those temperatures, though, this afternoon. 106 degrees is what it'll feel like in Wichita. We've got 105 for the feels like temperature temperature in St. Louis. Farther to the south, New Orleans, Corpus Christi, you will feel like 105. And the East Coast in on this as well. 100 degrees for that heat index value by afternoon in Charlotte. 96 is what it'll feel like in New York City later this afternoon. No relief as we get into tomorrow. Still triple digits for actual temperatures and heat index values across a lot of regions. We've got 105 for what it feels like in Nashville. Baton Rouge tops out at 94, but will feel like 105 as well. And we stay steamy all the way really through the end of our work week in some of these spots. Oklahoma City, you are above 100 until at least Friday. We've got high 90s to high 80s in St. Louis through Wednesday and Thursday. 98 degrees on Wednesday in Charleston, and feeling even warmer than that in a lot of these spots. 107 for Charleston by Wednesday, for what it'll feel like in Mobile. 107 as well on Wednesday. On top of that, some strong storms possible. We've got a severe threat stretching for 43 million people from parts of Illinois all the way to Pennsylvania, and then a chunk of the plains. We're mainly looking at hail and damaging wind gusts, but we can't rule out a couple of tornadoes as well. Tomorrow, an even larger threat, 26 million people. The wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour will be possible. Where you see this lighter shaded yellow is where we're most concerned. Indianapolis, Columbus, Charleston, Lynchburg, all included in that. And again, mainly wind and hail going to be the biggest threat, but tornado, can't rule that out either. We've got plenty of rain on tap as well, upwards of 3 to 4, even maybe 5 inches in some spots. And we're still dealing with air quality issues across parts of the Pacific Northwest. We'll see that be an issue with those wildfire smokes ongoing as we get through at least the next couple of days. Back to you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.